We're going live. We're going live. We're going live. We are live. Look at that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Today we are getting ready for our 220-1201. That is the Core 1 A+ study group. Just finishing up, getting things ready to go. Look, I'm like a minute and a half behind. What is going on today? All right, we got audio up. I do not have my ear monitor in. Let's see if we can get that going. Too many wires. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody is doing well. This is the pre-show, obviously. I shouldn't say obviously, but I swear the actual presentation will be a little more compelling than looking at the back of my shirt. We got a lot going on today. It's all Core 1 questions today. We pushed this one from yesterday to today, and then we have our Core 2 study group on Friday. An unusual, although seems to be increasingly common, Friday live stream. Hey, Mal, good to see you. Hope things are doing well down in St. Vincent. We're getting into season, aren't we? Make sure you've got all your batteries and all of your radios and all of the things you need, the food, all of that. So good, so good, so good. We've got a lot to go through today. Hope everybody's doing well. We have, what else? We've got, I have so many things. Now, you'll notice I was having a problem with the chat that is on my website. So if you go to professormesser.com/live, I embed the YouTube chat there, but it looks funny. Not funny like haha. If I go to professormesser.com/live, it's got this weird light background to it. Let's see if I can show you this nonsense. So I don't know why it is not showing the darker background. I played around with the little CSS, but see it's there. I played around with a little CSS earlier and could not get it to take, but I was under the gun and was not able to do that. I think maybe YouTube might have changed their JavaScript just a little bit. But there you go. That's one of the many things. I load everything up and then there's always something broken. That was the thing that was broken today. So I got to figure out how to fix that. But you can always go to the YouTube channel to look at it directly. So it always works out. We always figure out a way to do it. Folks are checking in from all over. Thanks for being here. We got folks checking in from Little Rock, Arkansas. We got folks in Canada. Thanks for being here. We got a lot happening there. So that's one of those things where if you are ever in the scenario where you're trying just to get things done, there's always something in the way. That's sort of normal. That's life. Presentation here looking good. That looks good. It's warm in here though. Let's change the temperature. Claremont, Florida, just around the corner from us here in our worldwide headquarters here in Orlando. We got a lot to. Let me see if I can find air conditioning first. Priorities, people. It's Florida in the summer. We need to make it cooler. Whenever I turn, these lights are LED lights, and they don't put out a lot of heat. There's a lot of other equipment kind of in the left and right sides. You can't really see it very well. There's a 19-inch rack on the left. This is the video switcher, this red, yellow, green thing that's in here. And then we've got recording systems. Oh, we're not recording. See, this is why we go live. So we can turn on our, see, I didn't see my Cylons going. Let's turn those guys on. Click to record, click to record. Look at that. Love it. Now you can see down here, we got that going on. So graphics look good. Those lower thirds look good. And everything else is working okay, as expected. So we can do that. Folks checking in from DC and South Africa and it's like Montana. A lot of Montana folks hanging out. I'm hoping to get there soon. Got a plan. I got a schedule. Got to get up there. Folks checking in from New Hampshire. Miramar. You don't say which one, but okay. Virginia Beach is here. Atlanta, Nigeria, Texas, Rhode Island. God, thanks for being here. So many people checking in. If you wanted to put your digital pin in our virtual pin cushion, you can do that by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to do that. I thought my audio was breaking up, but it's not. It's my headphone. My monitor is breaking up. I got things to fix. We got lots of things to do. Okay, Pembroke Pines. Now I have lived in Pembroke Pines. I've lived in Miramar, both of them, out there in Silver Lakes. So that's it's been a while since I've been down there. Been a while, but Pines Boulevard, that's just a mess. It just got a little crazy. Pines Boulevard and Flamingo got a little crazy. It was always busy, and then it got super busy. I lived down there during Hurricane Andrew, so that's when sort of South Florida changed where people were living, and Pembroke Pines became, I think right after that hurricane, Pembroke Pines became one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And you can tell because everybody's there, it seems. I think things have sort of spread out a little bit from there. I have been down there since, but it's just constant motion in South Florida. Always interesting. Okay, we've got all A+ for you today. I started this a little bit late because I was just late, because that was me. Let's bring up all of the stuff we need to confirm that things are working. You folks are in. Let's do a stream health. Stream is healthy. So we should leave that up so we can see any things that come up. Numbers look good. This is our streaming device here that is doing data rate of approximately 5.95 megabits per second. So it's about 6 megabits per second. I'm sending 1080p to YouTube. YouTube is crunching that up and sending you a new copy of it. So we're all good. We are all good in the neighborhood. We got a minute to go. Look at that. This happened pretty quick. I hope I have all these questions ready to go. I have a list of brand new questions for us today. So the first hour is me asking you questions. And then in the second hour, I will answer your questions. So I'll take your questions in the second hour. You can submit questions for the second hour at any time using that URL that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, or you can go to the chat on our website, professormesser.com/live, even though it looks a little weird today. I have to fix that. We have to figure out what's going on. Things are always changing. I'm never quite sure what it is. Since the last update, I've updated website software. There's probably been changes to YouTube's code. There's always something to work through. Well, with that, it is the top of the hour. Let's see if we can actually have it move over to 12 just to make it official. And indeed, there it is. That means it's time for a live stream. Let's go over to our keynote. Let's look for a green light. Green light looks good. We'll hit our green light. This is up. That's up. That looks good. I think this is all good. This is going to be different than the ones we've already posted. Every time we do a live stream, it's all brand new questions. So there's never something new. Actually, it's not true. The very first question we'll do today will be new, but you're about to find out about that anyway. And what better time to find out than right now? Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2026 Professor Messer 2201201. That is our Core 1 A+ study group. This is the study group where I'm going to ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we're going to see just how well you might know some of this content for your A+ exam. We have so many things to go through today. I think it's probably a good idea just to sort of get started on this. One of the things that I like to remind you, especially if you haven't been here before, is this is an interactive event. If you're here live, you can vote with the rest of us. And the way that you would do that is you would pop open a new browser window and head over to the link you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is the link that will tell you or give you access to the Q&A so that you'll be able to answer those questions. And one way that we test that is we do one question that was from a previous study group. This is the only time today that you're going to get this previous question from a different study group. This is from, I believe, the study group that we had last month. And the question was, and is, an office manager is comparing a 27-inch 4K monitor to a 65-inch 4K television in the lobby. If both displays have a horizontal resolution of 3,840 pixels, what determines the difference in their pixel density? As always, of course, please do not put answers into the chat. Do not put any hints into the chat. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to answer this. The possible answers are horizontal sync timing, refresh rate settings, aspect ratio specifications, color gamut coverage, or physical display width. One of those determines the pixel density. Have a look at that question, mull it over, submit your answer, or if you're watching this on the replay, think about what you think the answer would be. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment. Thanks very much for joining us. We do one of these study groups every month for Core 1. We do another study group for Core 2. So if you're watching our study group live today, we have our Core 2 study group scheduled for 2 days from now on Friday, an unusual Friday live stream. It's a great time to stop in if you're studying for your A+ certification. But of course, we're not always here live. You can catch us on the media that is social at professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/X, professormesser.com/Instagram. And of course, we've got our 24/7 chat that I'm always hanging out in at professormesser.com/Discord. Great way to keep track of the things that we are doing here. Also let you know that sometime in this first hour, if I remember properly, that's the real question, I will give you information on how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. Now, if you don't know what that is, we'll talk about it at that point. But if you do know what that is, then you're probably going to want this CEU. So keep in mind, listen out. Sometime in this first hour, you will be hearing instructions on how you can earn and get an email for this 1-hour CEU. You can also do that whether you're watching live or on demand. So either way works fine with me. So you can send those in. We cover you in any case. The A+ exam that we are going to talk about today is the current version. It's the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. You'll also notice on the CompTIA website, they use version numbers for these as well. So the 220-1201 is version 15, and the 220-1202 is version 15. They're just all version 15, I suppose. This is an exam series that was released in March of 2025, which means it will probably retire around September of 2028. Now, so as we sit here in 2026, you have plenty of time to study for this exam and take that exam. The exam requirements itself, you need to pass 2 exams to earn your A+. The first exam is the 220-1201, and you need to score a 675 on a scale between 100 and 900. The other exam is the 1202, the Core 2 exam. That one you have to do a little bit better. You have to get a 700 on that same scale from 100 to 900. And once you pass both of those exams, you become A+ certified for 3 years. It's a 3-year expiration. And of course, you can choose to renew that certification. You don't have to take these exams again. You can just do a renewal. There's a lot of different ways to renew your certification. And we'll talk more about those as we go through the study group today. Also let you know that if you go out to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to watch this replay and all of the replays of our study groups. As I mentioned in the pre-show, each study group is a different set of questions. So it's a different opportunity to learn something new in every single study group. We have our entire archive out on our YouTube channel, and you'll notice that the YouTube video description will be updated over the next day or so with timestamps of exactly what we did here today. We have those timestamps there thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this on the replay. Hi, Lori. She's there and typing in and figuring out where these are and where these fit. And you can find that on our YouTube video description for all of those. Also let you know, as I mentioned earlier, we do have this 24/7 chat in Discord. It's a great place to go to be able to keep track of the things that are going on here, especially when we are not live. I'm usually hanging out there along with thousands and thousands and thousands of other people who have decided to use this as a resource to study for their A+, their Network+, their Security+, or other certifications as well. We have some really smart people in that Discord. If you're running into a problem or you want to create an ad hoc study group and have people join to help you through Q&A, you can do all of that on our Discord. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam, and you can go to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take this exam. But why would you do that when I have exactly the same vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers? These are the vouchers that you would normally be able to purchase on the CompTIA website, but instead you're paying less than what is offered on the CompTIA website. We're able to do that because we are one of the few CompTIA Platinum partners in the world. And that is something that allows us to take a little bit of those savings now and at least provide an option for getting these vouchers at a lower price. Those are available to you if you live in the US, in Canada, or in a US territory. Not only do you get your voucher, I'll also give you a little bit extra, as you can get the Exam Hacks ebook. This is an exclusive ebook that I wrote with a bunch of tips and tricks on how you can study for the exam and tips and tricks and strategies you can use during the exam itself to be able to maybe get a couple extra points, maybe get another question right that you would have gotten wrong, and things you might want to do that might position you best to get that passing score at the end of the exam. That's available for you, and it's free. You can't even buy it. You can only get it with a voucher purchase or with the purchase of one of our success bundles. So that's something that is exclusive to this and that other package. You can find out more on our website, professormesser.com/vouchers, to learn more about that. Let's go back to that question I asked you earlier, which said, an office manager is comparing a 27-inch 4K monitor to a 25-inch 4K television in the lobby. If both displays have a horizontal resolution of 3,840 pixels, what determines the difference in their pixel density? Would that be the horizontal sync timing, the refresh rate settings, the aspect ratio specifications, the color gamut coverage, or the physical display width? Let's see what you chose. We're going to close the poll, and we can see that we did a little bit better. We did a lot better than we did last month, which is the physical display width was the answer that we were looking for. The physical display width, in this particular case, you're dealing with two separate monitors, two different display devices. One is 27-inch and one is 65 inches, but they're exactly the same resolution. The 27-inch is a 4K monitor. The 65-inch is also a 4K monitor. They both have exactly the same number of pixels, except one is bigger than the other. One's 65-inch, one is 27-inch. So that's where you really run into challenges, is how do you pick what the density is of these pixels as you get a number of pixels jammed into that 27-inch monitor. As the monitor gets bigger, the pixels get farther apart. So the pixel density is very different in a larger monitor than it is in a smaller monitor. And that's one of those important statistics that you need to know about. If you were going to look at a visual example of this, the pixels themselves, if you have a larger number of pixels per inch, then it has a much better view. It's a much more granular, more specific view. The smaller pixels per inch tend to be a little bit fuzzy, or you can see the jagged edges around different things. So it's very useful to have some type of understanding of what the pixel density is. As you get a larger monitor, you might want to decide to get a larger resolution as well to maintain that pixel density as that device, as that display device gets larger and larger. So that is the answer that we were looking for, and that's the one that 56% of you chose, which, as I mentioned, so much better than what it was last month. We remembered. We did well on that one. I'll take that as a win. 30% of you said it was the aspect ratio specifications. The aspect ratio is the ratio of horizontal pixels to vertical pixels. So 16:9 would be horizontal to vertical on that very large widescreen. But in this case, we weren't talking about the difference in a horizontal or vertical comparison. We were talking about pixel density, which is not part of the aspect ratio. When you say something has an aspect ratio of 16:9, we're not even sure how many pixels are in the 16:9 image. Therefore, it would be impossible to calculate a pixel density from that. 6% of you said refresh rate settings. We all love our refresh rates on our devices. We want 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second, 180 frames a second. Now, as we get these faster displays and faster, in many cases, games and other high-speed type applications, it's nice to have a faster refresh rate. But being able to look at the horizontal resolution of two different size monitors doesn't really help us understand anything about the refresh rate. So it would not be refresh rate there as well. Horizontal sync timing got 0%. Horizontal sync timing helps us understand the synchronization of this monitor versus what is being sent to the monitor from the computer. That timing is an important one, but it really has nothing to do with pixel density on that display. And then lastly, the color gamut coverage. The color gamut describes how closely this monitor can accurately represent a very large number of colors. And there's a set of standards available that present to us what a monitor should or should not be able to do. And we usually base the ability of that monitor on what percentage of color gamut it can properly represent. So if you're looking at a monitor and it says it's 100% of the SVGA, SEGA, the and there's 6 or 7 others that people tend to look at with the color gamut coverage. Those are great statistics to look at, but you might see it's 98%. It's 87% accurate to that standard. These let you know that if you are very particular about the colors on your monitor, maybe you're working with doing some type of publishing, maybe you do video editing, and you really want those colors to be very, very accurate on your screen so that you can have a better representation of what other people are seeing. You want to get one with 100% gamut coverage of the standard that is most important to you. But in this case, has nothing to do with pixel density. The answer that we were looking for is the one that 56% of you chose. It is the physical display width. If you chose that one, you got that one absolutely correct. Let's talk about the exam. And we've just finished a multiple choice question. That's our rewind question that we looked at. But as many of you might know, and I think some of you may not even realize, when you get to the exam room and you sit down and you start the exam, the first handful of questions you get on the exam are not multiple choice. What do you mean they're not multiple choice? The first handful of questions on this exam are not going to be a question and then multiple answers to choose from. Because on this question, if you didn't know the answer with these 5 different answers, you could have guessed and you had a 20% chance of getting it right. That's a pretty good percentage, by the way, if you know nothing of this question. Well, CompTIA doesn't want to make it quite that easy on you. They don't want to give you any gimmies on this exam, and they're not going to give you gimmies. So the first handful of questions you get on the exam are not multiple choice. They are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. Performance-based questions, broadly speaking, are any type of question that is not multiple choice. That's really what it is. So if it is a fill-in-the-blank question, that's a performance-based question. If they put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform a function, that's a performance-based question. If it's a question where you need to drag things around the screen and drop them onto a certain area, that's a performance-based question. So any type of question that you can think of, any style of asking the question that you could think about in your head is a performance-based question. I have a lot of people often tell me, can you just give me the performance-based questions we'll see on the exam? Well, no, I can't, because it is almost an unlimited number of ways to ask these questions. So it is almost an unlimited number of types of performance-based questions. So I have for you today a performance-based question. Let's see. This one I made a little bit easier than most of them, but I think it does help you to get a feel for what these questions are going to ask of you. And indeed, that is the most important part, is getting an idea of what will be expected of you. Just as an aside, and we'll talk about this in a bit, performance-based questions are not any more or less difficult than multiple choice. They're asking you about the topics that you already know about. So let's see how you do with knowing these topics. Here is the question that I have for you, and I know it's kind of cut off on the screen, so I'll tell you what all the text says so that we can see everything. There's just a lot here, and I wanted to get it all in there so you could see everything that was there. This question asks that you are an IT support technician for Atlantis Business Solutions, a consulting company helping several clients move applications and infrastructure to cloud environments. Match each organization with the most appropriate cloud deployment model. And I have for you on the side, it's interesting, in this case, I have 4 requirements And I could not make this any easier for you. There are 4 different available models here on the right side. On your actual exam, just so you're aware, there might be 7 or 8 listed on the side just to make it more difficult. But I wanted to ease into this one to see how well we really know this topic. So let's step through all 4 of these requirements. The 4 different models are the community cloud, the hybrid cloud, the private cloud, and the public cloud. So here are our requirements. The first one is Nakwita Manufacturing operates cloud infrastructure dedicated exclusively for its own employees and applications. The environment is not shared with other organizations, although a third-party company hosts the hardware. What deployment model is that? And of course, if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to give your answer with the link that is at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Next one is Furling Retail keeps its financial database in a dedicated internal cloud, but uses resources from a commercial cloud provider when its online store experiences seasonal traffic increases. What would the deployment model be for that one? Next on our list is 4 regional hospitals jointly use a cloud environment designed for healthcare organizations that share similar security, privacy, and compliance requirements. Organizations outside the healthcare partnership cannot use it. What cloud deployment model is that one? And then lastly, RDA Media purchases computing resources from a commercial provider whose services are available to businesses and individuals over the internet. The provider owns and operates the infrastructure. What cloud deployment model is that one? So we have quite a few to choose from. If you think you know the answers, again, use that link at the bottom of your screen to submit your answer at professormesser.com/QA. A lot of you are putting in your answers as we go through this. I'm not going to look at your answers yet. I want you to put in what you think the different deployment models are. Now, in this case, it's 4 models are available, and there are 4 requirements. That means we're going to use 1 in each one of those. We're not going to double up anywhere. There won't be any left over at the end, which I think makes it a little too easy. I don't like to give you easy questions, but this one I think is about as easy as you can get. As I mentioned, if this was an actual performance-based question on a real exam, there will probably be multiple additional models to choose from there. And I think that's pretty reasonable. That's why on these exams, these are the ones we think, as we step through them, these are the ones we think are closest to understanding the way that one works. So we'll see how you do with that one. Should be pretty good. See how you do with all of these. All we're looking for here is the 4 different deployment models. We're not putting them or compiling them as separate statistics, so you can just submit those just so you have them locked in and you remember what you put in that list. Go ahead and submit them so you can see what those answers happen to be. So it might be pretty good to be able to understand. See how you do with this one. Part of the things that I notice with the latest generation of performance-based questions, CompTIA is constantly working to make them more involved, more of a story, more of a scenario that you have to step through. So I am also trying to do a similar thing to prepare you for these types of questions, because this question is not necessarily too far removed from the exam objectives. In fact, it's spot on with the exam objectives, but there is a lot of text. There is a lot of reading about the scenario that we work with here. So this is one of those scenarios when people tell you, boy, this exam, it's a lot of reading comprehension. Well, in these first performance-based questions, that is certainly the case. But I think, and I think it's true of all of the questions, whether they're performance-based or multiple choice, I think CompTIA does a very good job at presenting you with something that you can understand. Sometimes people will come back after their exam and complain about the wording on the exam, which is unusual to me. But when we drill down to it, I find that it really wasn't the wording. It was an understanding of the concepts used with those words, which is a different kind of problem. I think you would agree. Speaking of problems, let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through the questions you submitted. This first explanation, or the question that we have, is that you are an IT support technician for Atlantis Business Solutions, a consulting company helping several clients move applications and infrastructure to cloud environments. Match each organization with the most appropriate cloud deployment model. And our available models are community cloud, hybrid cloud, private cloud, and public cloud. So let's step through all of them. We'll start with the very first requirement on our list, which is NACWA Manufacturing. They operate a cloud infrastructure dedicated exclusively for its own employees and applications. The environment is not shared with any other organizations, although a third-party company hosts the hardware. So if we wanted to choose between those four models, since it is something that is not shared with anyone else, and it is always exclusively for their own employees and applications, that is a cloud that is a private cloud. So that is really the identical, that is exactly the definition of what we're looking for a private cloud. We buy our own equipment, we buy our own storage, we have our own applications, they're running in our own data center. That's all private. And we can, of course, have the same cloud-based functionalities, but it's all based on ours. Our own equipment in our own cloud running in our own data center. That, by definition, is a private cloud. Now, sometimes, as you mentioned here, there are people that will also run this with third parties hosting the hardware. So if you have your own cloud-based services that you are purchasing on Amazon, on Azure, on any of these cloud-based companies, that scenario is one where it's still private to you. You're not allowing anybody else access to that, but it is on a third party. That's still a private cloud. So because nobody else can access it but you, and that's what makes it private. The next requirement we have is Furling Retail keeps its financial database in a dedicated internal cloud, but uses resources from a commercial cloud provider when its online store experiences seasonal traffic increases. This is almost like the previous requirement, except it's a little different in that we have our own internal cloud, but we also have an external online store that people access that is also cloud-based. So we're almost doing both of those at the same time. And if we are, that is one that is a hybrid. It is both gas and electric. It is both a private cloud and a public cloud. And I would say probably an enormous, a vast majority of organizations are probably using a hybrid cloud scenario where some of their applications are internal and private, other applications are external and public. And so they are almost always doing some type of hybrid configurations with that. Our next requirement is a company that is 4 regional hospitals that are jointly using a cloud environment designed for healthcare organizations that share similar security, privacy, and compliance requirements. Organizations outside the healthcare partnership cannot use it. So this one is sort of private, except there's more than one company involved. There's 4 separate regional hospitals. And of course, hospitals have their own requirements. There's certainly some of that here, but for all of them to share, because they all have the same compliance requirements, they all have the same privacy requirements, they all have the same community requirements, and there you go. There's your answer. It's the community cloud is what we were looking for. The community cloud is one where multiple organizations are sharing resources on the same cloud platform, and it's something that's commonly used for organizations that have a similar set of goals or requirements. Lastly on our list is the requirement that is RDA Media purchases computing resources from a commercial provider whose services are available to businesses and individuals over the internet. The provider owns and operates the infrastructure. Well, we've already done the first 3, so it's probably not very surprising that the only one left in this list is the public cloud. So if we have, for example, if you are on ProfessorMesser.com right now, you are on a public cloud server. It's a cloud server that I maintain. I make sure it has the right software, that it's up to date with most of its application patches, but I don't maintain the operating system on that device. In fact, I don't even technically maintain the web services on that device. I am only maintaining the application level side of things. I do maintain some of the operating system. So it's kind of a stretched out view of a public cloud and running something like infrastructure as a service, but public cloud technology is exactly what I'm using there. So this is one where I don't have to have my own equipment. I don't have to have my separate systems running inside of our studio. We have a separate public cloud server. We have multiple separate public cloud servers, and that is what is providing all of that to you. So those were the 4 requirements we had. Nakwita Manufacturing, that has a cloud infrastructure that is exclusive for its own employees. That's a private cloud. Furling Retail, having both an internal cloud, but using external cloud providers for their external web server so that they have an online store that they're maintaining. Because it's both public and private, it's hybrid. That is a hybrid cloud configuration. 4 hospitals that are jointly using a cloud environment that speaks exactly to a community cloud. And as we just mentioned, someone like myself that is using third-party cloud resources, but making all of those resources publicly available to the world, that is certainly a public cloud. If you're not familiar with these cloud models, they are specifically listed in your official CompTIA exam objectives, and there are other cloud characteristics that we need to know about for the A+ exam. This was not a question that included those, but if you're at all sort of wavering over the type of cloud deployment models that we have here, you might also want to look at some of those cloud characteristics that might actually help you with the identification of these deployment models. That was our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you some perspective of cloud deployment and the type of questions you might expect to see on something like a performance-based question. Let's now shift gears back. I think that now that we've got folks that have sort of looked through those, I have another question for you. Now let's shift back to a multiple choice question. However, this is our multiple choice question coming up that asks, a nurse needs to quickly log into various medical workstations by tapping an ID badge against the laptop chassis. Which of the following is being utilized for this authentication process? Is it, I guess if I brought it up on the screen, you'd be able to see it too. Is it Bluetooth, 802.1x, TPM, cellular PAN, or NFC? Got a few choices there to choose from. A nurse needs to quickly log into various medical workstations by tapping an ID badge against the laptop chassis. Which of the following is being utilized for this authentication process? Is it Bluetooth, 802.1x, TPM, cellular PAN, or NFC? Do you think you know the answer? I guess it would be good if I put up, not that graphic, I put up the lower third. There it is, ProfessorMesser.com/QA to submit your answer. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, ProfessorMesser.com/QA to submit your answer. Let's see how you do with this one. This is one that is a question that is pretty straightforward in its functionality. And if you've been to a hospital in the last number of years, you probably have seen they have all workstations that they're either rolling around from room to room, or there are separate computers in every single room of the hospital. And when the nurses and other medical professionals show up, they tap their badge to that device to gain access. So what is really happening behind the scenes? What makes that magic work? What is it that allows someone to simply walk up to a device without typing in anything in the keyboard and just tap their ID badge to gain access? How do they do that? How do they make that happen? If you think you know the answer, submit it at any time, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, if you think you know what the answer is. We got a lot of people that have submitted their answer. Let's see how you did with this question. A nurse needs to quickly log into various medical workstations by tapping an ID badge against the laptop chassis. Which of the following is being utilized for this authentication process? Is it Bluetooth, 802.1x, TPM, cellular PAN, or NFC? Let's see how you did with this one. We're going to close our poll to see how we do with this. Close the poll, and big numbers. 95% of you think the answer was NFC. 3% thinks the answer is 802.1x. 2% say the answer is TPM. And then we have 0% for Bluetooth. the one that seemed obvious from the beginning, and then 0% for cellular PAN, P-A-N. 95% is a big number, though. It's kind of hard to kind of work through that in being able to break down what these particular answers might be. But indeed, the answer in this case is near field communication, NFC. Near field communication is a short distance communication method that we have probably most popularized by our mobile phones these days. That's really what has enabled that NFC functionality. So you can use your phone, you can use your smartwatch, you can walk up to pay for something, and you just simply put your watch near the payment system. Some type of communication occurs right there wirelessly between those two devices, but you had to get really close. A near field, that is the near in the near field communication, that allowed that to happen. We can't be across the room and somehow get it to properly work with near field communication. So we're talking 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters, somewhere in there to be able to do that short range communication. So if you are in a hospital, you can tap a badge, and now you've gained access to that system. That's one of the ways they use or have chosen to use to authenticate. But you also see NFC being used in warehouses. You might also see people use this for door locks. Since everybody has their phone with them, what if you could get into the data center just by walking up with your phone, putting it on a sensor, and now the NFC that's inside of your phone is communicating back and forth to that sensor and allowing you access to the room. Maybe use it as a separate authentication factor. There's a lot of different use cases for this, but it's something that we all have gotten very accustomed to because you pay at the register now using NFC. So I think it's very top of mind, which makes sense that 95% of you would have that top of mind and know that's a great technology to use to be able to have that near field communication. You're able to authenticate or prove that you are at least hold that particular item in your hand, whether it's a phone or a card or anything else. And this is what allows the access there for these nurses. We also have other questions here. 802.1x is something called network address or network access control. Thank you, Siri, for complaining that I was talking to you. Network access control is one that requires authentication before you're able to get access to the network. That wasn't really what was happening in this question. Still an important set of protocols, an important set of processes that you can configure. 802.1x does not best describe the authentication process we see here. 2% of you said a trusted platform module. And indeed, the trusted platform module that is on the motherboard of these devices does allow us to have additional cryptographic functions available, but that's not what we were seeing here. There was no TPM functionality directly associated with this question. There were other answers that would be better describing this authentication process. 0% of you said Bluetooth. Bluetooth probably would be my second best choice for this scenario because we are close by. But with Bluetooth, we don't have to get a badge and we don't have to tap anything. We can really do Bluetooth from across the room. So maybe a good reason why we are not using Bluetooth in this particular scenario, since all of those rooms in the hospital are very close to each other, Bluetooth authentication would not work very well at all. And then cellular personal area network, that's what the PAN is there. The personal area network for cellular, not really a personal area network in itself. But cellular was not what we would choose here to make this happen. In fact, we don't need cellular networks to be able to log into a medical workstation by a nurse that is in our room. So not the technology we would be looking at, and 0% of you agree with me. Or I guess 100% agree with me. Nobody disagreed with me in that scenario. The answer, 95% of you got absolutely right. And that is the right answer, and I don't know why I'm over-explaining it, is near field communication. That is exactly what we were looking for. Let's do another multiple choice question. See if you come in so high with your percentage on this one. This next question asks, a network administrator is viewing at a packet capture containing the DHCP addressing process. Just work through it, people. You'll be fine. Which of the following would designate the end of a successful DHCP assignment? Well, that would be good to know, and we probably could see it in the packet capture, but which one of these would it be? Would it be accept, discover, acknowledge, offer, or request? It's got to be one of those, right? A network administrator is viewing a packet capture containing the DHCP addressing process. Which of the following would designate the end of a successful DHCP assignment? Would that be accept, discover, acknowledge, offer, or request? If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. As always, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the links at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you know this one. You have to know your DHCP process for the A+ exam. And this is certainly a question that is asking you about that. You'll notice that the questions tend to have a scenario associated with them. If you approach it in that perspective as well, another thing that we do or focus on with these questions is we also tend to have a couple of extra steps to get from the question to the answer. We don't often get a very direct question on these exams. It tends to take us through a story, and at the end of the story, we have to put all of the pieces together. This one is relatively straightforward, though. This one is a little bit less winding around the barn than a lot of the questions tend to be. So we'll have to see if you're really focusing on what these answers might be. Let's see what you think the answer is. The question as we were sitting here is, a network administrator is viewing a packet capture containing the DHCP addressing process. Which of the following would designate the end of a successful DHCP assignment? Would that be accept, discover, acknowledge, offer, or request? If you think you know, well, you do know the answer. So we're going to see what you thought the answer was when you submitted it at the link that we gave you on the screen. Let's close our poll and see. There it is right here. We've got a few to choose from there. We've got 65% of you that say the answer is acknowledge, but 28% of you say the answer is accept. So we've got a few to choose from there. If you're someone who is working through these questions, then you'll have to really break down what maybe one is better than the other, one is different than the other. We'll step through the entire process and see what it happens to be. 5% of you, single digits, it dropped pretty quickly down to request. 1% said offer, and 1% said discover. What if it was one of those? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? That would be pretty good if you were trying to break this down and understand it. So let's first, before we choose what the answer is, we should talk about DHCP. DHCP is a good one because it has a very standard 4-step process for obtaining an IP address. And the reason I wrote the question with a packet capture in mind is because you can't see this happening. It doesn't show you this on the screen. There's not a set of steps or processes that you can view in Windows to see what happened. This is all happening at the packet level. So I tend to call it DORA, D-O-R-A, just like Mount Dora. Here in Central Florida, the name of this actual city named Mount Dora. That's the Mount Dora City Hall that's there. Lovely city. You should go there sometime. A lot of fun, especially on the weekends. They have a 4-step process. The first is to discover what DHCP servers might be out there on the network. Then one of those DHCP servers is going to give you an offer, or there might even be multiple DHCP servers giving you an offer saying, oh, you need an IP address? Let me offer an IP address to you. But we're not done yet. Just because we got an offer doesn't mean we can use it yet. So we're going to look through all the offers we received. And since we're the ones that are being courted, we're going to decide we're going to go with that request. We're going to go with your offer, and I'm going to request that you give me that particular address as my selection. And once that particular request is received by the DHCP server, it responds back with, very well, if that's the one you choose, I will give you the acknowledgement that you have now received that one. You are now able to use that IP address on the network, and here are all the parameters associated with that. Acknowledge is the last step of the DHCP process, and if you were one of those folks, the 65% of you that answered acknowledge, then you got it absolutely right. That is the answer that we were looking for. Now, 28% of you said accept, and as you could tell, I don't usually do questions that are maybe gotchas or that have a trick to them. This really isn't a trick, but accept is not one of the options. But as you know, I give you 5 options to choose from, and I didn't have a 5th one here. There was not a 5th. There's only 4 in Dora. So I had to come up with another answer. Accept sounded like a good one. I accept that one. That seems like there's some finality to the term accept. But in this case, not part of the DHCP process, however. So although accept logically makes sense, accept technically doesn't apply to this at all. You got it. Not only did you get it wrong, you got it super wrong. So you can take that with you. You can enjoy the fact that, oh, I didn't get that one correct at all. The benefit of this, by the way, and everybody thinks getting something wrong is a bad thing. In this case, in our first hour here, as we are going through these questions, getting it wrong is fantastic. This is where you want to get the questions wrong. First, there's a couple things that are good with this. We're not your actual exam. No harm, no foul. And secondly, now we've learned something about the DHCP process. Now you've learned something you can take with you for the actual exam, which I think is valuable as well. The answer in this case is indeed acknowledge. And now you know why it isn't request. You know why it is not offer. You know why it is not discover. We went through those in the Dora process. And it would not be accept, which not an actual thing that we have in Dora. The answer is indeed acknowledge, and that's the one associated with this particular question. One of the things that I have found on these exams is that we have to know about port numbers, and we have to know about cloud services, and we have to know about packet captures and DHCP and DNS settings and troubleshooting all of this. And that's just one of the exams. What about the Core 2 exam? If you look at the exam objectives, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of objectives. And because of that, there's a lot that you have to memorize. Now, I've created an entire course online that has every single one of these objectives inside of it. We cover every single topic. In fact, you'll notice that it's 137 videos in length. There's over 19 hours of A+ training that we provide to you absolutely free on the internet. No registration required. We don't keep anything behind a paywall. It's just out there for you to watch. And one of the things that I recommend, of course, is that you go through every single video. But then how do you remember that content after you watch the video? And there may be cases where you're just not able to watch every 137 of these videos. So I created something that can help you with this, and these are my course notes. If you're not someone who likes to take notes, you would prefer maybe taking a different set of notes, that's why I created these. So you can remember these afterwards when you're working through them. The course notes themselves are available in a digital form that you see on the screen here. It's PDF, which means you can view it on practically any system. And there's a physical form as well. This is a printed book form made from dead trees. We love dead trees here in Florida. Go ahead, we'll print them. Don't worry, we plant more. This is a fantastic way to get information across. It's a great way to support the environment too, because there's no problems with paper, thankfully. We're dealing with that piece of it. If you get the physical edition of the course notes, you also get the digital edition at no extra cost. So it's a little bit of a bonus while you're waiting for that to arrive in the mail. The digital edition, as I mentioned, is provided as a PDF. And so it looks and feels exactly like the book that you just saw, the physical book that you just saw. All of the text from every video is in here. All of the important graphics are in here. All of the important tables are in here. So if you're trying to memorize, trying to reference, trying to go back and look at something that you remember from the video, it's probably in these course notes. It's also a great way to support the things that we do here as well. If you're someone who is planning for your exam, you're studying for these exams, you're trying to find a good way to study and retain all of this information, these course notes might be for you. You can find out more about these on our site. Head over to professormesser.com/1201 notes, or you can use the main menu on the site to look for the A+ course notes. This is one that is all up to date with the latest version of this exam. The 220-1201's been out for over a year now. It's going to be out for another 2+ years. So this is the current version that you need to be using. Make sure all of your study materials are using 220-1201, or they show 220-1202. If you're using study materials from any other version, you are not using the latest version of those exam materials. In fact, it will be very different than what you might expect to see on the exam itself. Learn more about that, professormesser.com/1201 notes. Thank you so much for your support with that. In fact, if I was showing some of these notes the other day, we were talking about the process of printing and having these sent out and making the PDFs available. It's something that's seamless. As soon as you purchase it online, it's something that is available now for you to see immediately. You can download those the moment you purchase, so you don't have to wait for those to be delivered. Let's do some more multiple choice questions, shall we? I think you guys love printer questions, so let's do a printer question. You just tell me I can't get enough printer questions. Can we do more of those? Well, of course we can. Thank you for asking. This question asks, an environmental agency wants to cut in half its paper consumption by automatically printing on both the front and back of every sheet. Which of the following must be present in the printer to achieve this functionality? Would that be ADF, orientation control, duplexer, quality module, or secured prints? It's got to be one of those, right? If you think you know the answer, make sure that you do not answer in the chat room. Head over to the link you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your answer. The question again asks, an environmental agency wants to have, which means cut in half, its paper consumption by automatically printing on both the front and back of every sheet. Which of the following must be present in the printer to achieve this functionality? Would it be ADF, orientation control, duplexer, quality module, or secured prints? If you think you know the answer, you can submit it at any time. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you're doing well with some of these. This might be also a good place to start brushing up on your printer skills. One of the challenges I think that people run into on the printer section is that we don't tend to have these really big laser printers or high-end pieces of printing equipment in our homes. So when we're asked questions about them, it might be something we don't have a lot of experience on. However, you'll find that the same printing front end, the same printing functionality, the same printing processes are happening with your home printers in exactly the same way they interact with the laser printers, which means the only thing we really have to learn is what's inside of that printer that makes it tick. What is inside of that printer that makes it work? If we know that part, then everything else is the same across every other printer that we might use. And fortunately, there's not a lot of different kinds of printers. The CompTIA exam tends to focus on 4 or 5 different types of printers. Some of them you get a lot more than others. For example, you certainly see a lot more laser printers than you see impact printers, for example. So hopefully this is something you're at least becoming familiar with. You will get printer questions on your exam. There's a whole section of that domain, of domain 3. So we'll definitely want to know that as you go through the Q&A for your exam. Let's see how you did with this printer question. It asked, an environmental agency wants to have its paper consumption by automatically printing on both the front and back of every sheet. Which of the following must be present in the printer to achieve this functionality? Would that be an ADF? Would it be orientation control? Would it be duplexer? Would it be quality module? Or would it be secured prints? Let's see how you did with this one. I'm expecting big numbers here, and we got big numbers, not as big as what we've seen today, but at least they're there. 90% of you say the answer, if that's what it is duplexer. We have 6% that said orientation control, 2% or 3% that said ADF, 2% that said secured prints, and 0% said the quality settings inside of your printer. Whenever you are working with printers and you're printing on both sides of the paper, we refer to this as duplex printing. It's a great way to save paper because you are, instead of printing on 2 individual sheets of paper, you're printing on the front and back of every sheet. Now, as I mentioned, of course, we don't have a shortage of paper in this country. It's really not really an environmental issue. We grow trees like crazy, at least here in the United States. But we did happen to see a real challenge with paper during the COVID. because all of the printer factories were closed down. It took a long time to ramp back up once we started doing things again. What a perfect time to start using a duplexing method so that we can use as little printed paper as possible. Hopefully we won't run into that scenario again. Not all printers can print on both pages. Sometimes you're using a printer that doesn't have a duplex method. It literally has to print on one side of the page, sort of spit the paper out, and then you manually have to put it back into the printer. You have to flip it over and put it back in to be able to print on the other side. Some printers will also put the piece of paper on the outside of the printer and then scoop it back in again with their internal duplexer to be able to make those work. So the duplex functionality, and a useful and important feature, if you're looking for that capability, make sure that your printer includes it, because it's not something that comes automatically in a printer. There's usually an additional cost. There's usually additional software and hardware to make the duplex process work properly inside of that printer. So probably will have a cost associated with it. That is indeed the answer that we were looking for. The 90% of you that chose duplexer got it absolutely correct. Orientation controls, what 6% of you chose, that's if you want the paper to print in a portrait mode or a landscape mode. So that's the one where we're sort of turning it. That was the image that was here, because there is a section on orientation on this slide. So it's a good example of portrait mode with, interestingly, a portrait in it. And then landscape mode, which is the longer left and right mode, which has a picture of a landscape in it. Funny how we got those names there, isn't it? But it would not have anything to do with printing on the front and back of every sheet. So orientation control would not be our answer. An automatic document feeder is that device that you put your paper into on a printer or a copier, and it pulls in each page at a time. So if you need to make copies or you need to scan those in, having that automatic feeder means that you can just put hundreds of pages on the top and you can walk away, ideally, and have it automatically pull in one page after another automatically. That's the A in the automatic document feeder. That does not allow you to print on both sides of the page, however. That's just a way that you're able to feed paper into that printer. We have secured prints at 2%. Secured prints is a way that you can print, and then you can wait until you get to the printer to be able to unlock the printing functionality and have it print while you're standing there. This can be important in an environment where there's sensitive information. How many stories have you heard about some executive printing out all of the payroll numbers for the company, and then somebody just wandering up to the printer, grabbing their output and walking back to their desk, not realizing they also grabbed the output of that particular executive, and now they know what everybody in the company makes. Having that sensitive information get out is something that is it is addressed by using secured prints. You have to walk up to the printer, put in your personal identification number, and only then is the printer going to print that particular output. Very useful, especially with sensitive information. And 0% of you chose the quality module. The quality function is more of a specification, not really a module on the printer, but there are configurations in the printer where you can tell it print in draft mode, print in a high quality mode, print in a black and white mode, print in a color mode. That type of quality setting is useful, especially with printers that can allow you to save a little bit of toner or save a little bit of ink. That's where you would set different quality settings, but there's not a separate module for it. And even if it was, that would not allow you to print on the front and back of every sheet. You are correct. You 0% of people for not choosing that one. That is exactly where we would hope to see. 90% of you chose duplexer. 90% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. I do these study groups every month, and part of the study group is I want to make available to you a 1-hour webinar category continuing education unit credit. That is a CEU, continuing unit education. CEU, continuing education unit. See, we did it, everybody. This is one where if you are collecting these CEUs to renew your certification, this is something you can use. Now, obviously, you can't watch a ton of videos and simply renew your cert, but I think for the A+, you can watch 6 of them. I think maybe it's 4, maybe it's 6. It's another. It's on the website. They'll tell you exactly how many are appropriate. And of course, some people will use these CEUs for other certifications as well. They're not just limited to A+. You've been here for an hour, you get credit for doing it. If you would like to receive an email that is, I have digitally signed that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU, then you need to follow these instructions because the instructions are part of the CEU process as well. You want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. On that website, you will see a link for Contact Us. Click that Contact Us link. It will bring up a form. In that form, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put August 2026 A+. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, duplexer ADF. Duplexer ADF are the super secret code words of the month. You can, of course, put anything else you would like into that message as well. I do read through every single one of these, but you don't have to. If you just need the email, you don't want to have a long conversation about the way things are going, you can simply put in those code words, send it to me. I know what to do from there. The process, again, if you missed it, is to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put August 2026 Core 1 or August 2026 A+. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, duplexer ADF. Duplexer ADF. That's what we were looking for. So if you're someone who is using those CEUs for your renewal, that's something that might really help you. Not everybody uses CEUs for renewal. A lot of people simply use CertMaster CE. Maybe they take a higher level certification. This is just another option that we have for renewing. So if that's something you need, make sure you send me that email. Follow those instructions. I usually will turn these around and get them back to you in about a week or so. Sometimes a little shorter, sometimes a little bit longer, but I do get them back to you. As long as you are following those instructions, you will get the email from me. Let's do another multiple choice question. I'm going to fit a couple more in. I think we can go through a couple more. I'm looking at the clock. I think we can squeeze a couple more in here. The next multiple choice question we have is this one, and it asks, a company wants to reduce the cost of hardware by providing employees with low power terminals which connect to Windows desktops running in a centralized data center. Which of the following technologies best describes this scenario? Would that be bare metal hypervisors, hardware emulation, type 2 virtualization, application containerization, or virtual desktop infrastructure? Got a lot going on there. A company wants to reduce the cost of hardware by providing employees with low-power terminals which connect to Windows desktops running in a centralized data center. Which of the following technologies best describes this scenario? Is that bare metal hypervisors, hardware emulation, type 2 virtualization, application containerization, or virtual desktop infrastructure? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you will be able to answer this question. Lock it in and see what you think the answer might be. We will go through all of these in just a moment. Lock in those answers. Go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. I don't want to say it too fast. You ever watch those YouTube videos where people just, go through those things they say every single time? Make sure you subscribe. I missed 3 things of what they just said. I heard subscribe, and then was I supposed to click an up link or something? What's going on there? So if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and submit your answer. That's what I'm looking for you to do in this particular question. That's what we want to have happen. It's after a while, I don't know if you're even hearing it anymore. So I'm not even sure if saying it makes much sense. You hear it so many times in this live stream, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you for putting up with all of that. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a company wants to reduce the cost of hardware by providing employees with low-power terminals which connect to Windows desktops running in a centralized data center. Which of the following technologies best describes this scenario? Is it bare metal hypervisors, which was the name of my first band? We have hardware emulation, type 2 virtualization, application containerization, and virtual desktop infrastructure. I'm dying to know what you chose. Let's find out. We will close our poll Good numbers again, not as strong as last time though, was it? We have 73% of you that think the answer is virtual desktop infrastructure, but a very strong 17% of you say that that is type 2 virtualization we wanted to find in this link. We have other answers that were filled in here as well. We have 5% that said hardware emulation is what we're using. We have 3% that say application containerization. And then we have 2% that said bare metal hypervisors. I saw them live in concert, the bare metal hypervisors. Big numbers though, 73% said the answer is virtual desktop infrastructure, which would be great if it was, would not be great if it wasn't. Many of you know this particular technology, not with the entire words that are there, virtual desktop infrastructure, but you may have heard this referred to as just VDI. VDI is what a lot of these organizations will do to an attempt to save money. They will have simple terminals or very inexpensive systems that are on a desktop, and then they will connect to a centralized server to be able to access that particular computer. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as desktop as a service to be able to make that work. The benefit here is the machine that is local on their workstation costs a lot less than a full-blown computer, especially these days. So you don't need a ton of memory. You don't need a ton of storage. In some cases, you don't need much storage at all. You simply need a keyboard and a mouse, and you're able to connect to all of this because you're able to centralize all of these desktop computers into one single device that is in the center of your business. It's part of that cloud-based infrastructure. Even the chat room saying, well, how does it save money? Well, because you don't have everybody in your organization using all of those systems all at one time on that single set. So you can effectively have 500 employees, but maybe you only have 250 that are active at any particular time. So you can have a relatively small infrastructure without having a lot of wasted computers that half the time aren't being used anyway. So another way that you can maybe save a little bit of money on all of these, if you are something like a call center, this would be great. This would save you a lot of money. The only thing you definitely have to have, however, is a good network connection because you're sending back and forth effectively a remote desktop screen share of what we have there. I set up a VDI of Windows on Amazon. Amazon calls this their workspaces function. And this is this is a basic setup. I didn't add anything. I just said, give me a Windows computer. And it said, okay, here you go. And this was a full-blown Windows 11 system that had, or maybe it was Windows 10 when I was doing it. It has all of the Windows functionality to it, everything that we may want to use in this, but I was just able to click a button and poof, immediately had a Windows machine available to me. So also saves a little bit of resources when the system is powered down. We no longer are running that particular virtual machine. So another great advantage to having a centralized form of desktops whenever we're working through all of this. VDI was the answer that indeed we were looking for. And if we click our show correct answer button, indeed, that's exactly what we were hoping to find. 17% of you said type 2 virtualization. We didn't have in this particular question the style of, in fact, we didn't even know if they were doing virtualization in this question. Ideally, we would think someone sees that in that form. How would you not use virtualization in this scenario? But this is one where we didn't describe what was happening on the back end. We were really describing what was happening on the front end. So assuming that it was using type 2 virtualization, which would probably be a bad assumption in this case, this is not a common scenario for type 2, but it is one that at least provides us with a concept, wait, there's something else going on the back tier. We were trying to describe what this scenario is, though, and that is best described with a virtual desktop infrastructure or VDI. Hardware emulation is one where we are using the actual hardware to emulate a separate machine's capability. And in this case, we're not really doing emulation. We're really doing more virtualization, although again, we don't know what's going on the back end of this. So in this particular case, hardware emulation is not what we're taking advantage of. At least this question doesn't describe any hardware emulation. Even if some was going on, that would be a different question with a whole different set of parameters. It does not describe the idea of having a desktop or a low power desktop on your system connecting to a centralized server. 3% of you said application containerization, which is certainly a good description of having a modular and very easy way to move applications from one cloud-based system to another, but does not describe this idea of having a separate Windows desktop that is managed and controlled and run in the cloud. And lastly, bare metal hypervisor isn't what we're using here either, or maybe it is, but this question doesn't describe the hypervisor piece on the back end. This is describing what's happening on the front end. And the front end here, we are dealing with VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure. If you chose VDI, you got that answer, got that question absolutely correct because you chose the right answer in that particular scenario. Well done on that one. Folks did really well on the multiple choice questions today, but we're not done. We have another multiple choice question for you coming up. Plenty more to go through. This next question, though, we're going to do a little bit differently. Same rules apply. We're just not going to have it online. We're not going to have it in our Vevox front end. So you won't be able to vote on this one. But again, please don't put answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, we're going to take a question that comes directly from my practice exams book. When I started looking around the internet at practice exams, whether they are practice exams that were created by a human, which tend to be a little better than the practice exams that are created by AI. The AI practice exams, even today, are not very good quality. Don't really test you on the exam objectives, and many times they're just plain wrong. I thought there's an opportunity here to find some higher quality questions, to make something that is more similar to the actual exam experience. So if you are someone who is working through practice exams, you might want to take a look at my practice exams book. This is a 387-page book. It has 3 separate 90-question practice exams. It has multiple choice questions. It has performance-based questions. We put this in to give you a very similar feel, style. Even the distribution of questions in each exam matches the distribution that is advertised in the official exam objectives. We tried to make this as close as possible to an actual exam experience without giving you actual exam questions, which of course would not be very ethical at all. Every question in here are questions that I've written and edited. So this is a very good example of how a human-based guidance for giving you something that can truly prepare you for the CompTIA exam is what we approach this particular problem. And I think we solved this particular problem by creating our practice exams book. But what better way to tell than if we go through a practice exam ourselves? So let's do that. I have a question from my practice exams. Again, this is something we won't be putting it into Vevox, so just think about what you think the right answer might be. This is question number B16 from my practice exams book, page 137. And it asks, an administrator has installed a hypervisor on a server, but the administrator is not installing Windows or Linux. Which of the following would best describe this installation? Would it be VDI, containerization, hybrid cloud, or type 1? I wanted to use this question, kind of pulls from some of the other things that we've done today. An administrator has installed a hypervisor on a server, but the administrator is not installing Windows or Linux. Which of the following would best describe this installation? Is it VDI, containerization, hybrid cloud, or type 1? If you think you know the answer, you can have a look at your book if you have the practice exams book. I have 2 types of answers in my practice exams book. This first one I call the quick answer. If you just want to know, is it A, B, C, or D? You can go to page 161. But if you want a more detailed answer, I have a separate page on 183. Before we do that, though, I'm looking at this question, and maybe I'd like to annotate some of this. Maybe I'm looking at, okay, it's not Windows or Linux. What else is here? I like some of these terms. And you can, of course, if you have a stylus, you can write on this screen. And it's a PDF, so anytime you annotate inside of this book, you can save it. And you can, when you load up the book again, all your annotation will be there. So another great way to keep track of your study process as you go through these questions. Now, as we are looking at this, I don't know the answer right off, but I'd like to get a more detailed overview of the answers. I mentioned I was on page 137. The details are on page 183. And with a PDF, I guess I could scroll through this PDF to get to page 183. But what I did in the book is I created a link that's right there where it says the details. Notice it turned into a little hand on the screen. Instead of the arrow, boom, turned into a hand. So if I click that, it goes to page 183, just like that. So no scrolling involved. Works very well. So here's the question again. An administrator installed a hypervisor. No, they didn't install Windows or Linux. What in the world's going on? And the answer is D, type 1. It's a type 1 hypervisor. Type 1 this is why I did not detail a lot of this in the previous question. I wanted to kind of give you a little heads up. A type 1 hypervisor is what we call a bare metal hypervisor. A type 2 hypervisor is one where we are first installing an operating system, and on top of that operating system, we are installing a hypervisor. So if you've used a VMware workstation, you've used VirtualBox on your Windows computer, or you've used a similar type of software on your Windows or Linux machine or Mac OS machine, then you've used type 2. But if you're using type 1, there's no operating system to install. The hypervisor itself is effectively the operating system. So something that kind of makes the process a little more streamlined and means that you don't have to then install a separate operating system just to get virtualization running on that system. Now, why was it not VDI? Why was it not containerization? Or why was it not hybrid cloud? Because this is the problem I have with practice exams is I'll get a question right. Okay, well, that was easy. And I didn't learn anything because I got a question right. But if I get a question wrong, in many of these practice exams I found online, there's no feedback for me. There's nothing to complete the learning loop for me. I got it wrong. Why did I get it wrong? This is a learning opportunity. This is a chance to help me understand more about what I don't know. So in my practice exams book, every incorrect answer is documented as to why it is incorrect. In fact, I think these are more important than actual description of why the right answer was right. I think the wrong answer being wrong is almost a better explanation in this book. In fact, I'll tell you that I tried to make every single answer in here apply to real exam objectives. So even if you get the answer right, I highly encourage you to read through the incorrect answers just to make sure that your thought process with the incorrect stuff was the same as my thought process and see if we have the same type of connection there. Also, if you've read through this question and none of this makes sense to you, it's as if a different language has been presented to you. I do have a way that we can help you with that because at the bottom of the details, I have more information with a QR code, which is useful if you have the physical version of the book. The QR codes are, of course, in here as well, so you can use your phone to maybe bring up and have a look at the videos themselves. But that links you to the video. So you can watch the video that I used to create the question, and now you'll have a better understanding of the terms and the nomenclature that was used during the question and the answers themselves. So another thing that might help you, once you're now done going through this question, you've looked at the answers, the right answer, you know why the right answer is right. You now know why the wrong answers were wrong. You may have even watched the video again just to get it really solidified in your brain. Well, now we can go back to where we were, but of course that was on a previous page, but you may not even realize that even PDF readers have a back button. My back button right up here at the top. I'll click the back button and we're back to where we started. And if I want to go to the next question, I can simply scroll down and go to the next question in our list. That is my practice exams book. And maybe that's something that can help you with your studies, something that can give you a broader approach to practice exams than what you might find online, what you might find through other sources. This is what we have designed to give you the best possible experience of understanding what that Q&A might be on a real exam. So something you might want to consider. Want to learn more? You can find out on our website, professormesser.com/core1pe. I've mentioned throughout this entire study group that everything that we've been talking about today comes directly from the official CompTIA exam objectives. Those objectives are available on the CompTIA website and they are free. And this is one of the best study materials that you can get for your exam. You can find it at professormesser.com/objectives. In fact, I need to update the objectives for this because you will find that they've actually moved where that red box is on the page on the CompTIA website. In fact, I'm going to go to the A+ CompTIA objectives. It's going to load up the CompTIA website here. And they have now on the first page of this right here on the right side. They put the red box somewhere we can all find it now. So I might be able to remove that or at least change the graphic. I'll do that later today. So if you want to find that set of exam objectives, it's right there on the CompTIA website. Those objectives are a great thing to read through before you start your studies. They are also a great read through, a great checklist before you schedule your exam, because they will tell you if you really are ready for your exam. Well, how do they do that? Well, let's look at one. This is the set of the A+ objectives. They give you a summary of the exam, what this does. You also have information about the different domains that are on the exam. There are 5 domains in the core one: mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. And then you've got all of the objectives spelled out for you one by one in great detail in this list. So every section of every domain lists out every possible thing you need to know. And here's the way that CompTIA approaches this. They stick to this list like glue. They very rarely, if ever, deviate from this list of objectives. That means if you study this list and you can explain to yourself or someone else in section 2.7, the satellite internet connection type. What is a satellite internet connection type? How is it used? When would we see this used? What is the best use case for this? What about fiber? What about cable? What about DSL? What about cellular? What about wireless internet service provider or WISP? If you can describe to yourself or someone else and compare and contrast all of those different internet connection types, you can check those off your list and go to the next set on here. And once you have done that with every single objective that is in this sheet, you're ready for your exam. And you can't help but pass at that point, because they stick to this list so closely that if you know everything on this list, then you effectively now know everything on any exam that they could present to you. It's a great study guide. It is a great way to direct where you might be able to find weaknesses or even strengths in what you are doing. If you need that list, it's on the CompTIA website. I have links to take you over there at professormesser.com/objectives. professormesser.com/objectives. Instead of you stumbling around the CompTIA website, I take you right to the page. So you'll find exactly where it is in that website, be able to work with it. We do one of these study groups for Core 1 every month. We also do a Core 2 study group every month. As we are here today, it is indeed August the 5th. And in 2 days, on the 7th, we have a rare sighting. It's a rare Friday live stream, which I think I'm starting to like a little better. I'm not sure if it's great for you, but we have a good time. We do these Friday live streams. So as we sit here on the 5th of August, as we're doing this live, come on back on the 7th. We'll do it again. Of course, it's all new questions. It's specific to the Core 2 exam. We do one of those every month. Of course, we still have our Network Plus study group this month on the 12th and our Security Plus study group currently scheduled for the 19th. And of course, in September, we've already set those dates. September the 1st and 3rd, we've currently got scheduled for A+. We have Network Plus on September 9th and Network and Security Plus on September the 16th. But these dates can sometimes change. The times are usually the same, but those could change as well. So always check the official calendar to know what the latest date is going to be, the date and times, at professormesser.com/calendar. I also keep a duplicate of this list on our Discord. There's an events channel on our Discord. All of our events are listed there as well. So you'll know exactly when the next live event happens to be. You might be watching this on a replay. It might be well after September, but you can always find out when the next live event is going to be by following the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/calendar to know when this is going to be. Well, our first hour is over, but don't worry. There's still a lot more questions to come, except our after show is next, which means that you will be able to ask me questions. You can submit those questions at any time using that same link we've been talking about this entire time, professormesser.com/QA. You could submit questions using the tab at the top of your screen. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. If you're in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory, you can take these exams for less money. Sure, you can pay full price on the CompTIA website or get exactly the same voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. It also helps support the things that we're doing here, which I think is a win-win. So you might want to consider that. Head over to professormesser.com/vouchers when you're ready to purchase your voucher. Don't forget also about our success bundles, our course notes, our practice exams. They are all on our website. You can go to professormesser.com/1201success to learn more about those, or simply choose the option from the main menu of the website. And on social media, the way that you find us is you type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us on. professormesser.com/X, professormesser.com/Facebook, professormesser.com/YouTube/Discord, etc. You get the idea. And if you think you know where we might be or where we might not be, you can type that in and you'll see if we happen to be on that site. If we're not on your favorite social media site, let me know, because I should probably be there, right? Be glad to load up our daily pop quiz questions on that, give you yet another option for getting this valuable information that we think is going to help you pass your A+ exams. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our first hour, but there's so much more to come. Stick around for our second hour after show coming up immediately. Don't touch a thing. All you have to do is hang out for a couple seconds. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay, now is the part of the study group where I take a little sip. One moment. And we will try to see if I can get rid of our graphic. There we go. It's time for the after show, everybody. The after show is the part of our study group where it's probably the most interesting part of our study group. Maybe you don't think so, but I plan for that first hour. I write out all the questions. I write out all the answers. I try to make sure we have everything in place. I put everything on the online system so that you're able to access it. We set up the live streams to get everything running, which is, we enjoy that. We always have fun when we're doing that. But there's also an opportunity when we're stepping through these things to have you ask me some questions. And those I haven't prepared for because I don't know what your questions are until right now. And that's what we do right now on the screen is I want to find out what these questions might be. So one of the things that I always mention, I guess if I put it here, maybe I've got too many of me on the screen at once, is that you can submit questions for that second hour of the study group anytime you'd like. You just go to the top of the screen, but I'm going to moderate these questions. And once you submit them, they don't show up on the screen anywhere, but I do see them on my side. So don't worry, I will see them as they come through here. And that is exactly what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go to our Q&A section and I'm going to start looking through the questions that you submit. You do not have to put your name on these if you do not want to. You can be anonymous. I don't see who submits them in that particular case. Not one of those things where I mark it as anonymous and it looks anonymous to me. No, it really looks anonymous to me as well. So you don't have to worry about me knowing who you are. Of course, I don't even know what the names you're using are correct anyway. We don't check for those things. So you have plenty of options there to work through this. If you would like to submit a question at any time, top of the screen, go to professormesser.com/QA. And at the top of the screen is a tab where you can switch around and submit questions into our study group. So let's talk about the questions that you have submitted and some of the things that you have here. We will take questions about A+, we'll take questions about technology, we'll take questions about career, we'll take questions about IT in general, or questions about anything really. It doesn't have to be about IT. We tend to focus on that in this study group, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes we'll ask questions that go a little bit outside the scope of the things that we would normally do, which is fine. I like doing that. If you're somebody who's working through the details of this, that's something to consider. Let me put this on the screen real quick. I'm going to sift through the questions that you have. Go to professormesser.com/QA. There should be that tab at the top. I think I have. Maybe I can even show it. I'm not sure that I can or not. We'll put me back up and we'll go to maybe my live page to show this and being able to make this work. And I'm gonna log into these sessions as if I was you, as if I was you working through this. Although my session isn't showing up in all of this, I guess I could have just clicked on that one to be able to get there. I wonder if I am really doing the right session. Oh, it'd be nice if I joined the right session. into this view. And I do plan on working through the configurations that you have and working through the questions that you have. So I want to show you where you would find those questions. If you were to log into Vevox, you put in your name, it just presents to you, oh, it's the A+ study group. So thanks for joining. You could submit a question. What you're looking for is a little tab at the top of the screen. One shows a little house, and the other one shows a little chat box, which really doesn't describe what those are. But the little chat box is what we're looking for, where it says that you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We'll be moderating questions. You can type a message, and then you can either send it as yourself or send it as the anonymous. And I will be glad to have a look at the questions that you were sending in. So that's what that came from. That's where we found it. That's how you can submit a question at any time and being able to work through there. So let's now talk about the questions that you have submitted. Some of these are pretty good. So we're going to step through the first question that we have. This one is from Haley, who asks, if you are hiring for an entry-level help desk position today, what would make you choose a career changer with no IT work experience over another applicant? And this is one where this is a question that I think is top of mind for many people, because a lot of us who are working on these certifications may have just gotten out of college. Maybe you're in college now. You're working towards a technical degree, perhaps. You're planning that this is going to be your first job right out of school is going to be this technical job. But there's also a large group of people that this is going to be their second career. There's a lot of people that may start down the road of working in medicine. They might work in transportation. They might work in a retail environment. They might work with law enforcement. And they think, this is not what I thought this career would be. I really like technology. I'm now going to, in the middle of my life, shift gears over to a different career. Not unusual at all. Happens all the time. And I would say in the vast majority of cases, it's a good thing that it's happening, because you really want a job that interests you. You really want one that you're happy to go to every day. I mean, it's good that people pay you, but you also want to enjoy what you are doing while people are paying you. I like technology because I like solving problems. I like puzzles. I like finding how to fix and get out of that particular puzzle. That fascinates me. And so technology was great from that perspective. But here's the question you have, is that if you're now, maybe you're a little bit older than you were coming out of college, just guessing, and you now want to move into IT, but you got all these young little whippersnappers coming right out of school with all this knowledge. How am I supposed to compete against that? How am I supposed to make that happen? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I do have some strategies that you might want to consider. The first one being that if you have spent a number of years or a certain amount of time in a particular role, in a particular career, let's say you're in healthcare. Let's say you started out and you said, I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to go into nursing. That's what I want to do. I want to help people. Then you get into nursing and you realize, oh, wait, there's blood here. I was not ready for the quantity of fluids that I would have to be dealing with. Maybe this isn't for me. I want to help people, but maybe not directly. Maybe indirectly help people. Maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe you're somebody who works in a very menial type job. You lift stuff all the time. You work in a warehouse and you're thinking, like me, my back's not going to be able to handle this for a while. Or there's too much walking involved. I'd like to do something in the air conditioning, which I'm a big fan of myself. So how do we transition into that role when people have really been working on this technology for years and years and years before I ever showed up? One of the things that I think many people changing careers in midstream, I think one of the many things that they miss is they don't leverage all of that work that they have done in that particular career up to this point. You think you're throwing it all away. I was in nursing. I'm going to throw nursing away and I'm going to go into IT. But I think that is probably your worst scenario. That's the worst thing you would ever want to do. there is probably an employer out there who has some type of connection to healthcare that would love to have a technical person who has that healthcare knowledge that can bridge that gap between the technical side of the business and the objectives that we're trying to accomplish as a company. Maybe it's working with the hospital directly. Hospitals have huge IT organizations. Hospitals are all IT these days. You walk into a hospital, it's all technology, it's all electronics, it's all powered, it's all connected and networked together. There's huge security requirements. There are huge compliance requirements. There's a lot of IT in a hospital. And one of the things that you'll find is if you have a knowledge in that particular area, you should find an IT job in that particular area. So if you worked in healthcare, you should get a job that has something to do with healthcare. Hospital's a great example of this. Same thing for law enforcement. If you're in law enforcement, there are tons of organizations that maybe either directly, maybe you work in the IT part of because law enforcement has a huge IT component these days. So maybe that's where you work. You have a knowledge of the entire business that somebody just out of school does not have and will not have because you've lived it. Those are skills and knowledge that you can bring to the table regardless of who you are and where you're coming from. There's value in what you have done. But that doesn't always work out that way, of course. Maybe you worked in construction and now you want to work in IT. There's not a lot of construction IT. There really isn't. There might be in very, very large construction companies, but it doesn't tend to work that way. However, one of the things that we also don't tend to think about when we are moving from one career to another is we have built a very strong network of people in the organization that we currently work. And that network can be very valuable. This is the time when you would use all of the network capabilities you have. If you are part of a larger organization, ask everybody in that organization, do you know somebody who is hiring in IT? If you are working and maybe you go to church, ask everybody in your church, do you have a friends or family that work in IT? Are they hiring right now? Send them my resume. Let me send that over to you. You need to start getting your paper in everybody's hands. It's surprising how much of a network we've created. It's one of the reasons I often tell you when you start working in this industry, make sure you create that LinkedIn page. Make sure you keep it updated. Make sure everybody knows where you are and what you're doing. And why you do that is you're creating that network of people that you with one post can send to everybody on your LinkedIn network. Hey, I'm looking for a job in IT. If you have any leads, let me know. So every possible place you can go to. And I think that network that we have built over the years is a valuable, valuable thing. And we need to make sure we take advantage of that as well. So you've got your experience working in that particular vertical segment, whatever it happens to be, healthcare, transportation, whatever you're doing, and then being able to bring in all of those contacts you have and use them as a secondary method of finding jobs also makes a lot of sense. In some cases, direct jobs, being able to really work with a very specific type of job. So that is one where your experience that you have spent in the world in a job does not get 100% thrown out the door. If anything, that might be the leverage that allows you to move into a job in IT just in a particular specific area, maybe one that is very similar in context to the IT that you're working with there. It doesn't always work that way, but there is an advantage there, and you want to be sure you take advantage of that. All right, well, thank you, Haley, for that question. That is one that I think we run into in a lot of times because I hear people all the time coming to me saying, I'm doing this now, I'm moving to this. I work here now, I'm doing this. You need to have a strategy. You need to have some type of plan to position yourself better than the people who are just now coming out of college. And you have plenty of resources to do that with. So make sure you use those resources. Let's keep going into the questions that you have submitted. Of course, you can submit these questions at any time using that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Let's keep going through here. Now let's kind of take it to the next step. You've now gotten the job. You're now working in this organization. It's your very first IT position. This applies whether you're moving from a different vertical market, or maybe this is your very first job in technology right out of school. But this is the question that is posed to us at that time. This is from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, "Hello, Professor. I recently got my A+ thanks to your videos, and I'm starting a help desk job. And this may be a vague question, but how do I make the most of my new job? I'm planning to continue my studies in free time for Network Plus and Security Plus. Is there anything else I should be doing? Thank you in advance." And the question, of course, is yes, there are things you should be doing. And I'll give you a perspective of this. Now, there's a certain approach when you're hiring people for help desk. So you should, of course, understand the environment you're about to get in. Help desk is a first line of attack. You're taking the very first contact from people that are in your user community. You are the face of IT for the company. This is not something that you should take lightly. When people are having a problem, you may be the very first person they talk to about this particular problem. And they need you to be the one to fix it, or at least direct it in a way that gets it fixed in the most expeditious way possible. Just get it done. Just get it fixed already. We just need this problem to go away. One of the things that is important there is that we have a good approach to customer service. We have a good approach to communicating with people. And as you're probably aware, especially these days, I think COVID was a big hit on this, is not everybody is really good at communicating with other adults. And I think the part that we missed explaining to people is, as it turns out, communicating to other adults is actually really difficult. We don't train enough on these interpersonal skills, I don't think. I think we should sort of throw people into this help desk job and say, best of luck to you. We'll sort of direct you as you go, but we're not really giving you any upfront training on how to work with other human beings, which I think is a miss. We need more training on that type of thing. Sometimes the training is on the job. The training is you talking to people in this environment, you working with troubleshooting these problems, does teach you a lot of that, for sure. I have taken classes, formal training on how to communicate with other humans. There are plenty of training classes like this out in the world. It's interesting, the world of corporate training, especially third-party corporate training, where people come into your organization to teach you very specific skills. It's very niche. And so I took a course from an organization. I wonder if they still have it. The type of course, it was from a company called Decker Communications. So that was just one of the many examples out there that provide that. But Decker Communications is focused on communicating. That's all they do, is teach you how to present, how to communicate with other people. This is one of those types of things you go to. It's a training class. The one that I was in was about communicating with other people. And this is that class where you talk for a minute for 60 seconds on a topic, and then they are recording that. You have a video recording of that. And then at the end of you doing it, we watch the video, and they tell you, well, see how you're holding your hands, see how you're standing, see how you're using your hands during the presentation. And they talk about, that's good, that's not good, don't do that, absolutely do this. And they direct you as to how you are doing from the perspective that you don't have, which is how people are seeing you. You can't see you, not easily, but you can watch a video of you and have people kind of break that down for you a little bit. So I think that this would be incredibly useful for practically anyone. I took that class kind of later in my career. So this is one that can really be for anyone. And there's always an opportunity to learn how to communicate better. And that's one of the things I think would be really useful. And I think that's one of the things you learn, or you need to learn, when you are on a help desk. Here's the other thing I would highly recommend. You're going to be a sponge. You're going to be learning about the virtualization systems. Here's the cloud-based technologies. Here's the security team, the networking folks with their switches and routers. There's some downtime this weekend. They're going to do a database upgrade. We've got a call center that we're spinning up. We got a new data center that's coming online. There's a lot of things going on, and you in the help desk are going to be sort of the center of this. You're going to learn or hear about all of it. But as you've already mentioned, and as most organizations will tell you, they don't want you in the help desk for more than 6 months, certainly no more than a year. You should be rotating out of the help desk by that time. The help desk is there. Of course, they need the help desk functionality, but the other thing is they want you to grow out of the help desk quickly. They want you to be part of their organization in a larger role. So this is your stepping stone. Not only is your foot in the door, but your stepping stone to get into that particular role. So we want you to level up. We want you to get a better job almost immediately. And the way that you do that is you build the relationships within the organization. One of the things I did when I started with a corporate help desk, my first job out of college was a field service technician. You saw people once and you never saw them again. So there wasn't a chance to really create a lot of relationships there. There were some people that I would visit more than once. One of them was a corporate environment. It was an insurance company. I would go by the insurance company, I don't know, at least once a week. And they would ask about, what about this machine? What about that hardware? We need to swap out that system. How quickly can we do the upgrade on this one? And well, while we've been talking, I just upgraded it for you and here you go. And they said, well, we want you to work here. We want you to have a job on our help desk. That was the first corporate help desk job I had, was at that insurance company. And I didn't know nothing about insurance, but I certainly knew about technology. And one of the things that I found really valuable there was hanging out with the people doing the things I wanted to do. So I was in the help desk. I was on what we called our service desk, but I wanted to do networking. I wanted to do operating systems. I wanted to do network operating systems. I wanted to be on that network side of things. And so I would talk to the networking team. Hey, what's going on with the network? Oh, I saw you're doing a upgrade this weekend. What are you replacing? Is that a thing here? And occasionally it will be one of these larger jobs on a weekend where they have to take down a whole rack of equipment. They have to move it to another building. They have to put the rack back in. They have to put all this equipment back in the rack. They have to run new cabling. There's just not enough hands for that. And I would always say, oh, do you need another hand? Another pair of hands? Need somebody hanging out? Get coffee for you? Need somebody can really work through this? And they saw my enthusiasm about wanting to learn the technology and said, yeah, you should come in on the weekend. We're doing all of this. And you can just shadow us. You can follow us around and see what we are doing. And since you're there, we can have you pick up heavy things and put heavy things back down again. And that's perfect for the cheap labor that I was at the time. And that was great because it solved a number of problems for the organization. It solved a number of problems for me. First, it allowed the organization to do these jobs faster because there's another person there helping, especially on things where you're moving equipment around and there's another pair of hands and somebody can put in the screws with the electric screwdriver while other people are holding up the equipment. We can get everything exactly the way we want. And there's just more people doing that at that time. We can get things done even faster. So it's better for everyone. The second part is you're learning amazing amounts of information. In fact, you're probably learning more than you can even keep in your brain at that point because you're just sort of taking everything in. You're being hit with a fire hose and you're just trying to drink at that point. So you're now in the middle of them. Oh, we just racked all of those switches and you're watching them configure the switches. You don't even understand the language they're typing in at the command line, but you can kind of see the process they're going through. There's the configuration. They're putting in a new setting that sets it up for something they're calling spanning tree, whatever that is. And this is setting up this configuration with layer 3, whatever that is. But you're just there and you're just sort of taking it all in and learning the details of that. Those types of processes and things you do go such a long way. I still remember doing some of this. And I think it's because it's the first time you ever are part of that technology. The very first time I sat down with an operating system that was on the network, it had a RAID array inside of it. I think it was running RAID 1. One of the drives had failed, but the system was still up and running. In fact, the user had no idea that the system was actually in a failover mode and was missing one of its hard drives. Because it's RAID 1, everything kept running and nobody knew any different. So we were there to swap out the RAID drive and to do an upgrade of the network operating system. And that's what we did. And it was the first time I got to work with RAID in a practical environment. I'd set it up in a lab, but never seen it actually working. And then I had never worked with that particular network operating system before. These days, Windows is sort of Windows servers, sort of the premier. That and Linux are the ones we use these days. But it's one, if you've never worked with them before, especially not in a networked environment, it brings a whole new level of knowledge to the table. Now there's Active Directory, and we have to configure Active Directory and connect to it using LDAP. And we want to be able to make sure that all of our Active Directory is replicating properly. And there's all this extra things you don't usually get on your Windows system at home, is there? So you're learning constantly when you're put into those situations. And anytime anybody had something going on the weekend, I would always ask, do you need another pair of hands? Is there anything I do? Is this all remote? Oh, it is all remote. It's going to take a long time. Can I just remote in with you and watch what's going on? And one of the great things about this business, about this industry, is generally speaking, people are really good about wanting to include you with things like that. People are always wanting to teach you some of these technologies. Very rarely would I get someone who just did not want me to be a part of it for whatever reason. And maybe it was their own skills they were unsure of. They didn't want somebody else there. You're going to take over my job. There is that human side of thing that you have to consider. But the vast majority of folks are wanting to bring you along, especially since the network team themselves knew that they were down a few people. It's hard to hire for that particular role because you need someone who's knowledgeable, and you really don't want to put anybody new on your network who doesn't know your infrastructure. What if we could hire from within? We could pay you a lot less because I was new. I didn't know this stuff. So I would take a lot less, and then I could start to learn as we went. So I was willing to take that hit financially, when in reality, it was more of a practical number. If you don't know networking, they're not going to pay you like you do, but it gave me a chance to learn it. And you can bet the next job I got that had anything to do with networking, I now got to ask for a little bit more money because now I knew all of the things that I didn't know before. The goal in this IT world is to keep leveling up. And there's plenty of ways to level up. This is not on a rail. It's not like the very first thing you need to do is help desk, and then the very next thing you need to do is workstation administration. The very next thing you need to do is server administration, and the next thing you need to do is networking. It doesn't work that way. You tend to lean into technologies so that you can then get a job working with those technologies. The things that interest you is probably where you will go next. But what interests you? Is it Linux? Is it packets on the network? Is it firewalls? Is it reporting? Is it databases? Is it mail? What is it? Is it cryptography? Is it certificates? There are all these different ways and directions you can go with IT, which I think makes it a very valuable place to be. That's just one of the reasons we do what we do, is I really do feel that technology it's really the ultimate equalizer for pretty much everybody, because a computer, they don't know who you are. The computer doesn't know where you've been. The computer doesn't know if you are a guy or a gal. It doesn't know if you're from this country or another country. It doesn't know anything. All it knows is you are there on the keyboard typing these things in. You're the only one with the knowledge to make all of those things happen. So that, I think, means that anybody in the world who wants to get into this industry and be good working with technology, you can absolutely do that, because nothing is really limiting you. I worked with people that did not have functions in their arms or legs, and were still one of the best help desk people I ever had. Those types of situations are very unique in the world of jobs, but in the world of IT, it's sort of a normal thing. There's so much opportunity here. And we often look at the sort of the bad side of these opportunities. We often think about, I saw some negativity on I don't know if it was in our chat or Reddit I saw recently, where people were bemoaning AI. I get it. There's a lot of bad things about AI. Certainly. There's advantages and disadvantages to practically anything. And I've got my own list of advantages and disadvantages of AI. Disadvantages is probably a little bit bigger from my perspective, but there are things that AI does really well. And certainly in the big data world of AI, there are things that we're coming across, things we're doing in this world right now that will really change life and how we approach things. It's not just a technology play. We're really talking about extending and making our lives better thanks to some of the technologies we're doing with big data. So this is where I really try to emphasize with people, don't just look at the negatives that people think AI is here, therefore no technology jobs. If you approached it like that, why don't you go back to the time that Apple introduced the iPad? So if you look at every single post online when the iPad was released, when you look at all the presentations I did when the iPad was released, everybody was saying computers are over. Nobody is ever going to have a computer on their desk anymore. Laptops are done. Big computers are over. You're never going to need those again. Everybody's going to have a tablet. This is the future. Hey, how'd that turn out, by the way? Are we ever going to need anybody to understand how to troubleshoot hardware, how to install operating systems, how to configure the operating systems, how to secure the operating systems, how to network the operating systems? Turns out it didn't change anything. We just all bought a bunch of iPads to go along with our computers. So I think the naysayers are very, very quick to talk about the end of the world as we know it. They will constantly tell you how negative things will be and that AI will be the end of all of us in the IT world will never. It's not. We're fine in IT. The world itself is sort of reacting to the economies of AI, and there are some concerns here with the economies of AI and the technology behind AI. Certainly, we can have a conversation about that, but the opportunity for IT is still there. The IT, even for AI, what a good example. Well, if AI is going to be the next big thing, who's taking care of AI? That's you. So there is an opportunity for us to do the things we've traditionally done. There's now opportunities to do things that nobody has done before. And by the way, this is just a normal part of what we do in this industry. After we get through this big run with AI, there's going to be another new technology right behind it. And there's going to be another new technology right behind that. And there's going to be another new technology right behind that one. And the reason I know that is because that's what's happened over the last 30 years is we've gone through new technology after new technology after new technology after new technology. Many of those technologies are still here. Many of those technologies are not here anymore. So we are doing virtualization like crazy. That was a technology that came out that we all embraced and that eventually migrated into the world of cloud computing as we know it today. But there's other technologies for you networking people where we started implementing millions and millions and millions of dollars of asynchronous transfer mode networking, ATM networking, asynchronous transfer mode. The next big networking, this is going to get rid of Ethernet. Nobody's going to need any type of wide area network topologies anymore. We're just going to run ATM everywhere. All of our applications will run on ATM. All of our voice networks will run on ATM. All of our video communication will be on ATM. Everything we do is on ATM. It is the perfect topology that allows us to run anything, anywhere, completely over the single mode of networking. And it's not around anymore. It's gone. We don't use it. It's not here. Some of the building blocks that we use to create ATM, things like Sonnet, of course, we're still using because that was here before ATM. Now it is also here after ATM. But the ATM protocols, the ATM topology itself, doesn't exist any longer. The companies that made it are no longer in business. The things that we really focused on, no longer there. The things we learned when we were creating it are still good to know. The knowledge that we have of the networking and how these different technologies work together, we still have in many ways on our networks today. But that specific technology no longer exists. You're still going to run into those. I don't think AI is going away. I don't think that virtualization's going away. I don't think cloud computing's going away, and nor should it, because there are some things that are really advantageous with those. But not every technology hits. Not every technology sticks around. But it's also useful to know that you could choose any one of these, become a master or an expert in that particular area. And that expertise is one that is really going to allow you to move up, level up in your industry, because you have a very specific knowledge about a very popular technology, and people want that knowledge and are willing to pay you for it. Or maybe you change your minds. When in my career, I went from field service technician to corporate service desk, corporate help desk. From there, I moved into workstation administration. From there, I moved into really server administration. From there, I moved to networking. I did this the slowest possible way. From networking, spun that into cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is where my last corporate job was with Palo Alto Networks as a senior systems engineer. So learning everything there was to know about these next generation firewalls, how they work, how to connect them, how to plan, how to build out an infrastructure of these technologies into anybody's network. Exciting, fun, always an interesting thing to do. But then was able to take all that knowledge and then spin it into how can I get other people doing this? And that's sort of what created what you're looking at today. So I didn't know that would be the case when I started learning about servers and protocols and networks and all of that, but none of us know where it's going to lead. This is one of those few industries where things change all the time. Sometimes they change and you don't have any ability to have any control over that change. Other times you can kind of lean into a technology. You can kind of lean into virtualization. You can lean into cloud computing, learn more about that technology, learn more and more about how that technology works. And then suddenly you are a subject matter expert in that particular field. And suddenly there's a bunch of new jobs available that you didn't even consider until you had that particular expertise. That is what IT brings to the table. You can't do this very well in something like medicine, for example. If you go to school to be a nurse, you're a nurse. That's what you do. You can't really leverage that into doing something else in that particular healthcare field. Can't now suddenly become a podiatrist because you went to nursing school. But IT works a little bit differently. You can lean into a technology and learn as much about it, because if you think about it, the instant a new technology appears on the market, all of us are at the same place. We are at the same knowledge level. We all know just as little about this technology as everybody else. Very few people are experts at that point. Well, there's your opportunity. Now you learn everything you can about that other technology, and now you become a subject matter expert in that one, and that even gets you more opportunities in the market. So that's where I tend to approach these problems, and being able to talk about when you start with a help desk, what do? You just start learning, and you start asking, and you start begging for assistance, and you start begging for someone to help you through these problems. There's plenty to learn. You will never learn everything, so you have to pick and choose. Be a big, important part of that. So some feedback we got on the chat regarding AI is, well, how could AI be an opportunity for us if it's been nothing but layoffs? Well, here's the thing about the layoffs regarding AI. None of these layoffs regarding AI were made because the people laid off didn't know AI. Those people were laid off because these companies saw an opportunity and didn't have enough money to invest in that opportunity. Quite literally. I mean, we're talking about multi-billion-dollar corporations, but it takes billions of dollars to invest in something like AI. Well, if you don't have the cash on hand, we need to get cash from somewhere. But the biggest expense for every organization is payroll. That is the biggest expense every month. So if you need some extra cash money, some extra liquidity that you can now spend to buy into the world of AI, hire some developers, buy some equipment, get all of that there. We need some capital to be able to do that. let's just fire the West Coast. Let's fire the folks in this place, get rid of all of them. That's now this much money that I can invest in this other thing. It is an awful way to do business. It is a horrible way to do business. It's an awful way to treat people. These companies don't care. They do not care how they treat people, which I just find awful in the world of public companies these days. But here's an example of where this didn't happen was over at Apple. And the reason Apple didn't do it, whether you like or don't like Apple, we can do an arm wrestle about that one later. But they didn't fire anybody to do all of their AI related studies, to do all of their AI related research, because they already had cash in the bank. They're an incredibly cash rich company. And that's another great reason that these big companies, they should have had cash, but some of these very large companies, some of these very small companies in general don't do very well with managing their cash. They don't. They're awful at it. They think it just comes from everywhere. The cash will just keep coming. We'll just keep investing. There's no strategy associated with it. Not so much with Apple. Apple knew from the very beginning, let's put this in the bank. These retained earnings will help us later down the road. Let us save for a rainy day. They got a lot of stockholders angry with them for that. Stockholders don't like having a lot of cash on hand. Apple said, we don't care what you like or don't like. We're keeping a lot of cash on hand because we might need this. And indeed, that gives them some leverage they did not have other places. If you want to work with Apple, they can take you or not take you because they have so much cash. They can buy the resources they need to be able to make that happen. So I think that's an example. That's why all of these layoffs happen. Now in the media, they just said AI is coming. Everybody's getting fired without the idea of why were those people fired? They were fired just to get cash. But now one of the things you'll notice is that it's been a year and a half. The technology they bought a year and a half ago, you ever buy a laptop and a year and a half goes by and you look at that laptop thinking, this is kind of slow now. That laptop's not the best. There's much better laptops on the market now. Yeah, but they've already fired all these people, spent all their money on this new hardware. And now, as it turns out, the hardware is a year and a half old, and the capabilities of AI are now being put into boxes that we can run on our desk that are this big. So the technology is moving so fast that we may find that a lot of the investment that was made a year and a half, 2 years ago, no longer has the impetus. It no longer has the oomph that it used to because it's an older technology hardware wise, and there's no new hardware to buy. They bought all of it. So we are working desperately to build new hardware. Companies have decided not to sell hardware to consumers anymore because so many corporations are buying all this hardware. It has really changed the market quite a bit. So this now has to settle down. This takes a long time, doesn't it? It now has to kind of settle into where is it going to go? Where is it going to be? And at that point, and we're already starting to see this, by the way, companies are starting to hire again. You're starting to see it. If you haven't been looking at the job postings lately, suddenly there's more job postings going on. Suddenly there are more recruiters calling because I keep my ear to the ground on this one. It's an important part of what we do. And we're seeing a little bit more activity with the hiring of IT professionals because now we have to do something with this. We've invested all this time and money in AI. Now we have to sell the AI. We have to make money from the AI. Now we need people to help us maintain and manage and sell that AI. So that is what I see a lot happening. That's where I think this industry is going to change a little bit. But that's one of those scenarios where we would want these companies to be a little more human. And I think we just saw a very non-human reaction to AI in the corporate world. It was another reminder that, and sort of where we are in the world of really hiring and firing, is that there is no longer someone who is a company person. You no longer work for a company your entire career. That left us a long time ago. But just as another reminder, the companies are really not here for you. You're performing a task for them. They are paying you for that task. And that's the end of the contract. That is the end of the equation. If they need money for the next AI that comes along, they will fire you so that they have the money for the next AI as it comes along. Is that good or bad or indifferent? Well, we can have an argument about whether that's good or bad. And I think overall it's probably bad. I think having people have a goal, a large organizational goal where you are making the world a better place is a much better way to approach this than how can we spend more money than anyone else. I think there's probably pluses and minuses on both sides of that, but I think that we will start to see more hiring. Think we'll start to see more higher level hiring, and we'll start to see more companies sort of come back to the reality of technology now that they have gone down this road of AI and tried to figure out where it fits and try to figure out where it doesn't fit. They're finally figuring that out. Now it's time that we can go back to work. And I think that's something you don't have to worry about there being less jobs in technology. If anything, there will now be more jobs in technology because there's a lot more. We still have the existing cloud. We still have the existing virtualization. We still have the existing applications. Nobody got rid of anything, did they? How many large business applications disappeared because AI came along? Exactly 0 of them. Did it improve maybe some low-level automation? Well, sure. But you could have improved that beforehand, by the way. Us here in IT, we've been doing automation since there's been computers. There have been batch files in our operating system since the very first version of DOS. Even before that on mainframe systems. So if you were running a DEC VAX, the Vaxin cluster you were using had its own automation and its own batch processes that it was running. If you were on a cyber mainframe running the Plato subsystem, there was a whole new set of automations that were running on that large system. We're just doing the same thing. We're just using another tool to automate it with, but it's still using the underground foundation that we built for all of these. So that makes perfect sense to me. And hopefully that's, we will start to see we'll not only start to see the industry change, but I'm hoping we'll start to see the rhetoric change a bit. So people will go, oh, we are hiring again for IT. Oh, we do need these technologies. We are making these things happen. And in the meantime, we can all fight about whether AI is good or bad. We can all fight about whether a data center is good or bad in that particular place. It's just ironic to me that someone complains about a data center and reads from their phone as they are talking about how bad this data center is. You need to figure that one out, brother. Maybe you should have brought that on a piece of paper with a pencil and make that happen, because it's not compelling. You need to make it compelling to me to have that happen. I know we're after the top of the hour. By the way, thank you for that question, my good friend Anonymous. It allowed me to talk for 30 minutes, I guess. Sorry about that. I tend to go on and on and on and on sometimes, but I think that was an important scope, an important reference point that we could make, because now we need to start looking into the future. How are these jobs going to change, if they are, or are we just going to go back to working these jobs the way we always have? If anything, so glad that we are on the IT side of things and not the computer science side of things. I like that we're the ones managing the systems and the data and keeping everything safe and keeping the networks running. I would not want to be an application developer right now. I think there's a bigger challenge over on that side with career than there is on the IT side. There's good and bads on both, but I think we're in a very advantageous place. So great place to be. So happy about that too. Sometimes it's good to be good. Sometimes it's good to be lucky. Either way, I'm taking it. We'll do all of those. More questions. Let's keep going through. I know we're at top of the hour. I can fit one more in because the throat is still working. Maybe I'll take a little sip. Okay, folks, in the chat room, we're asking about the exam objectives. And I told you could go over to professormesser.com/objectives, and you should, because it does say this is here. And you can ignore the graphic for now. They just moved where this red box was, and I showed that to you. And if we go over to the CompTIA Plus objectives, this is the CompTIA website. And now the red box is just on the top. It's on the top of the fold, as we used to say back in the day. We used to have these things called newspapers, and every day they would deliver you a piece of paper that had a printout of all of the news, and you could read it it was static. It didn't change. But at that point, you got to see what all the news was at that particular point of the morning anyway. These newspapers were great because everything they wanted to show you, they were folded in half, and all the important things were on the top of the fold because that's what you saw in the newspaper stand was the top fold of the paper. So that's why I say top of the fold. That's where they came from. Top of the fold. I appreciate you sitting there and having me over-explain newspapers. The top of the fold, right here at the top of the page, to the right here is this red box. That is the box we were looking for. That's the one we wanted. If you do not see this red box, that is because this is a dynamic, I think it's probably JavaScript that was created there. Let's find out. We're going to right mouse click and inspect. We'll do some webbing here. And it is a form that is there. I don't know if it's JavaScript is what created it in my browser, but it is a form. And because it is a contact form that is there, you can kind of see the text of that contact form might get filtered by a pop-up blocker. It might get filtered by software that's on your local computer. It might get filtered by a filtering server if you were in a corporate environment. Those, so you might not see that red box if that's the case. Go into another browser, bring up something like a different mode. So it's not in your regular mode. Maybe it's the, what do they call it in Safari? In the Safari mode that we have here, mine in Chrome. In Chrome, it's incognito. Go into the incognito mode in Chrome. In Safari, I forget what it's called. Maybe the similar thing. But go into that privacy mode in your browser and see if it's still there. Because maybe there is an add-on or something blocking it there as well. But get rid of the filter and you'll see it there. That little red box will pop up. You just put in your name. My email is in there right now. I'm going to click the box that says, by submitting this form, I agree to the privacy notice and authorize CompTIA to contact me. Let's read through the privacy notice all together, everybody. Let's go through. Okay, we won't. Privacy notice is pretty big. There's a lot in the Did you read through that? I just read that one. We'll read through that section. Yep, got it. Section 8. Yep, okay, we read through the privacy notice. So I feel good about that. Let's click that we read it. And let's click access now. And immediately it shows me all of the objectives I have access to. This is really the problem with this red box, by the way, is that they created this dynamic red box that makes it so convenient to type in your name and instantly these appear. The problem is that it also, if you have a filter or a block on your system, that looks like something that should be blocked. It looks like an ad that should be blocked. So that's what you want to do, is go into that mode and find it. And now you just click on it to get the latest version of the exam objectives. That's where they are located. So if you're having problems finding them, that is where they are. If you don't see the red box, it's because you are blocking it somehow. It is there. I promise you it is on there. So make sure you go back and see if you can see it. Get rid of the block, go back to the page, refresh. It'll pop up. You'll be able to see it. And you probably even know what's blocking it, don't you? I do. On my computer, I know exactly what caused that. So you can turn that off, refresh the page, get the exam objectives, and then maybe turn it back on. Maybe that's what you do. Either way is fine. Okay, we've got one. I got a good question here that's sort of a summary question of somebody asking about the differences between the different versions of the exam, specifically the previous version of the exam. For example, right now, you have the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. Those are versions of the exam that are the most recent version. The previous version was the 1101 and the 1102. And obviously, there are differences between those. About every 3 to 3.5 years, CompTIA comes out with a new version of the exam. They phase out the old, they bring in the new. Generally speaking, the new version of the exam has about 30 to 50% difference than the previous, because you sort of get rid of older technologies that you no longer need to teach people, and they bring in a lot of newer technologies. So we see changes in the exam objectives every time there's a new version. But what's really the difference in these two? Well, one of the things I will point you to is the Professor Messer website. And on our website, we have a section for A+ Core 1, A+ Core 2. I'm going to combine these together in the future. So you'll just see A+, and then you have a second window. You choose which one you want to go to. Network Plus and Security Plus. I've also got those same links up here in the main menus of the site. But if you go to the 1201A+, and you click the option to start A+ Core 1 here, this shows you all of the different resources available on my site for the A+ exam. So the free videos, you've got free study groups. You're on one of those right now. You've got 24/7 chat. That's our Discord. We've got a daily pop quiz, a free pop quiz you can receive every day for A+. You've got course notes, practice exams, success bundles, discounted vouchers. We even offer CompTIA's own CertMaster products at a discount. If you wanted to use CertMaster to be able to learn A+, those are here, but you pay less than going to the CompTIA website. Currently, we have their book, which is what they call CertMaster Study, and we have their labs, which they call CertMaster Labs, to go through. At the very bottom are some A+ frequently asked questions, and the last frequently asked question is, what are the differences between the previous 220.11.01 version 14 and the updated 220.12.01 version 15? And if you click on that frequently asked question, it tells you there are updates. And if you click on the link that I provide there, I have an entire article that details every change to the exams. I show you visually what the differences are. Everything in the green is the same between the two. Everything in the yellow was dropped from the 1201. Everything in the blue was added, brand new to the 1201. Nothing like a nice set of diagrams, nice Venn diagram to keep the party going. And then if you wanted a breakdown, I put both of those exam objectives next to each other, and I made a note of what topics were dropped and what topics were added, and I documented those. So these are the topics that were dropped from the 1201. So under section 1.1, nothing was dropped. Under section 1.2, mobile display components were dropped. Here's an example. For example, under section 2.3, CompTIA dropped specific 802.11 standards from that list. So if you studied for a previous version, you had to study 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n. These are versions of wireless networks, by the way, that nobody uses anymore. And CompTIA realized that and said, why are we learning all these standards that nobody even uses? You don't have to know those anymore. So it's sometimes nice to know what they've dropped from the exam and what they added. So I have another section here that goes through each of those sections and tells you here are the things that were added to the exam. So for instance, in networking, they added the 6 gigahertz wireless band and they added channel selection. Under the hardware section, they added mini LED, they added BIOS temperature monitoring, they added impact printer with multi-part paper. You can go through this entire list and know exactly what they changed in these exams. Of course, you could do this yourself. You could do it manually. I also have a link right here at the top that says, are you looking for the difference between the 1102 and the 1202? I've got another article that goes through the Core 2 exam. Similar article with similar options, but obviously it's a different set of questions and a different set of topics, so a different distribution. That's where that comes from. And of course, I summarize what was dropped and what was added also in this list, so you'll know exactly what those are as well. Understanding what will be asked of you on this exam is an important thing to know. I had a number of people that will take their exam, they won't do well. Some cases they don't pass. They come back to our chat and say, they didn't pass. I didn't do well at all. There were a lot of questions on topics I was not expecting, to which I have to ask, what topics did you get that you were not expecting? They said, they asked me a lot about cloud computing and different installation types. Like, well, that's in the exam objectives, the public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, community cloud, those types of things. Yeah, the exam objectives, what are those? And this is the place where it's one of the reasons I always tell people, make sure you get the objectives. Make sure, I say it over and over and over again, in the fear that you're just tired of hearing it. But this is why I say it over and over, is that there are so many people that have not heard that yet. And you need to tell them, You need to let them know, get the exam objectives. They tell you every possible thing that could be asked of you on this exam. Get those exam objectives. They are so valuable. They will tell you exactly where you need to focus your studies. So if your question as you're finishing this up, one of the number one questions I get is, how do I know if I'm ready to take the exam? Well, have you gone through the exam objectives? How many of those objectives can you explain to yourself or someone else? Is it 100% of them? Is it 95% of them? Is it 90%? You're probably okay to take the exam then. If it's somewhere around there, you're probably pretty good to take the exam because you'll be ready for any question they ask. You'll know anything they ask of you at that point, whether it's multiple choice, performance-based question, or anything else for that matter. So that's why I think it's important for you to get those objectives, not because I think they're useful, because I know they are. And in many cases, people are taking their exams and not even knowing there's a set of objectives that tells them everything they need to know. So use every tool available to you, the free ones, the ones that are commercial, use the videos that you find online, find the ones that work for you and find the ones that work with your style of learning and use those for your exam. But make sure you base them all around those exam objectives. That should really be the center of your studies, is the objectives, and then all the study materials is what you put around that. So if you consider it that way, I think you'll be in pretty good shape. We've gone well past our 2-hour mark. We're well after the top of the hour, but I sure appreciate you hanging in there with me. Thank you so much for being here in the first hour too. We could not do these study groups without your help. I guess we could, but there'd be one person voting on every question, and that would be me, and I would only get it right half the time. So thankfully, you are here to do these questions the right way. Thank you so much for doing that. We do one of these study groups for A+. We do 2 for A+ every month. Our next study group is in 2 days. So if you enjoyed this study group, we'd love it if you would give it a thumbs up. That does help us quite a bit on the YouTubes. But also, come back on Friday. We'll have our, as I mentioned, our rare Friday live stream. We don't do those very often. And it's one where we're going to do all of this again, but for Core 2. We'll see how well you know your Core 2 Q&A on Friday. Same time. Check the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, if you'd like more details on where and when the next live event is going to be. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.